then the *7 to unmute. Thank you. Well, thank you all for getting on to talk about opportunities for retrofitting affordable homes. The opportunity comes to us via what is known as the Clean Power Plan. And this is the result of federal EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, coming out with new clean air standards, actually emissions reduction standards from power plants, and that each state has to have in place, has to be meeting their target goals by 2030. They have to begin the process by 2022, but well prior to that, there has to be a plan in place. Getting ahead of myself a little bit here, and so the goals for Pennsylvania, the goal is to reduce emissions from power plants by 33%. And it is up to the states to decide how they're going to do that. You can reduce emissions by switching to clean power sources. You can reduce emissions by reducing demand, or you could do both. And of course, it's in the state's best interest to do both, to include as many avenues to this goal as possible. The way that the state will proceed is set down in its Clean Power Plan. So today's webinar is really designed just to give you some information about the Clean Power Plan, why we think it's important for the affordable housing world, and how you can participate. I am not an expert on environmental stuff. I wouldn't even say I'm an expert on the power plan, but I do want to share with you what we do know and how we're proceeding with our advocacy that we're inviting you to join. I know there are a couple of people who've signed up for the webinars who do have some expertise, and they're welcome to chime in if questions come up that they can provide a better answer for. But at any rate, let's move through and see what kind of questions do come up. The Clean Power Plan provides us with an opportunity to talk about energy efficiency in affordable housing. Let's start with where those opportunities lie in terms of the timetable. Right now, DEP is collecting comments on what people think should be part of the plan. So this is a really important time. It's a time when they will be looking at that balance between clean energy, renewables, and energy efficiency. How does energy efficiency fit into the whole mix? How do we go about achieving energy efficiency? This is the time when they're taking comments so that they can formulate a plan. Those comments are due November 12th, which is in 11 days, I think. Once they have the comments, they'll put together a draft plan, which will be published in early spring. And being a state agency, they do have to put that out for comment, so there will be another opportunity to comment. But at that point, the ideas have already been put down on paper, so getting comments in by November 12th is important. But following through and commenting again in the spring. The plan is not due to the federal government until September 6th, but in Pennsylvania we're on kind of a fast track, or an early track, if you will, because last year the legislature passed a law requiring DEP to submit the plan to the General Assembly, to the legislature, 90 or 100 days before it goes to the feds. And so that puts us in late May, and the legislature will then hold hearings on the plan. As I understand it, the legislature does not have veto power over the plan, but they will hold hearings. Of course, hearings are another opportunity to provide input. And then the final plan goes to EPA, as I said, September 6th of next year. So what are the opportunities for energy upgrades in affordable housing? And really this slide talks about why would the state care? I mean, I think anyone on the call knows why we care, because as property owners, whether multifamily owners or whether you're working with homeowners, homeowners save money if they can reduce their use of electricity. Why would the state care? Because it needs to meet its goals of reducing emissions, and we can help it do that by reducing demand in affordable housing. The energy efficiency approach is cheaper and easier than going to renewables. I don't want to speak against renewables, and we certainly hope that that will be part of the plan also, and expect that it would be. But energy efficiency is an easier, more cost-effective approach. And why affordable housing, subsidized housing, low-cost housing, or low-income owners? Because this particular population, as opposed to multifamily in general or the residential real estate market in general, this segment really cannot do these upgrades unless they've got some help. So we really need to be targeting some resources to low-income homeowners, to owners and developers of affordable multifamily, to housing authorities with public housing, because without the assistance from the state, these upgrades and the efficiencies probably won't be getting done. So I listed a number of different types of homes that we think can be included and should be targeted, and I would add to that even small mom-and-pop landlords who have properties in low-income areas where the rents are very low. It is difficult to make repairs. It's difficult enough to maintain the property, let alone making energy efficiency upgrades. So we think that's also a potential target that would benefit the residents who live in those homes. There's a focus that's slightly different from just general energy efficiency in affordable homes, particularly in multifamily, and that is that EPA has a particular focus on low-income communities. EPA is very concerned about environmental justice. They've got a whole wing that focuses on environmental justice, which is in a nutshell, is ensuring that all people are protected from environmental hazards, and that really the environmental justice movement came out of the recognition that so often when you have pollutants, polluters, various sorts of chemical plants, utility plants and such, they would tend to be sited in low-income neighborhoods or communities of color that didn't have the political wherewithal to keep that stuff out of their neighborhoods. And the environmental justice movement was started 30, 40 years ago. EPA is very focused on environmental justice. They want to know from the states, how will your plan impact low-income communities and other vulnerable populations? How are you going to reach out to vulnerable populations? And they are offering an optional clean energy incentive program which focuses on renewable energy and also energy upgrades in low-income communities. The interesting thing about the incentive program is for clean power, it offers a one-to-one credit. That is, that the state will get credit, a credit for every, a reduction in megawatt of electricity produced. Actually, I didn't study the formula for the renewables. It gets a one-to-one credit from the renewables. But on the low-income community side, every time it's estimated that a megawatt of power generation is avoided because of energy efficiencies that have been put in place, the state gets 2 credits for that. So they're upping the ante for focusing on low-income communities. And when we're looking at low-income communities, we won't necessarily need to make sure that an individual household is income eligible if they're in that community. So that makes it a little easier to work there. So what are the energy efficiency programs, or the reason that you're all on this call? How do I get some money? The short answer is there aren't programs at the moment. We want to design some. We want to suggest some in the comments. We want to promote them through the comments and through follow-up meetings and initiatives. We want to work with DEP after the comments go in November and before the plan comes out in the spring. So we want to be thinking about whatever is out there, was out there, could be out there, to help owners to upgrade their properties and start saving money, but saving energy usage. So I've listed a few that I'm not really going to go into much detail on, but a few examples would be the Smart Rehab program that PHFA ran when there was some stimulus money to go into weatherization, and this was for multifamily project developments. There is a weatherization program that helps low-income homeowners upgrade their properties. It's federal money. The state could put money into it. At the moment, the state of Pennsylvania does not. There is, and some of these things, again, are fairly new to me, and I'd be happy to have other people talk about them in a few minutes. Keystone Help Program, which is a loan program for energy upgrades. My understanding is the Treasury had been supporting it, Pennsylvania Treasury, and that support has dwindled. The program, I think, still exists but has been modified in its terms. But again, we're not necessarily looking at what is out there currently, but what's a good model. Maybe part of the model is for the Treasury to start investing in these programs. Low-income usage reduction program, LIRP, which is which are utility-run programs that help low-income residents, customers reduce their usage. There are rebate programs. If you've bought an Energy Star appliance in the last few years, you might have taken advantage of a rebate from your electric provider. There have been tax credits available. So there are a variety of different ways that we can go about making resources available. And I guess maybe in the and part of that also, I guess, that I didn't list here would be types of financing that would well, there are, again, low-cost loans, grants available. Again, the segment really needs that sort of investment in order to get the work done. Where does the money come from? The credits under sort of a cap and trade scenario have monetary value that the state can auction off and take some of the proceeds and put into programs. So programs could be funded by the utilities because, after all, the onus is really on the power plants to reduce emissions, and so there's a reason why they would have an incentive to put some money out there. Again, please mute your phone if you can with a *6 or with the button on your phone. Thanks. Financing, where you can calculate or estimate future savings from the energy efficiency to pay for a loan, and that sort of is related to this concept of social impact bonds, where the government can do borrowing and repay the bonds with cost savings from that result from the investments made with the funding. Again, these are ideas that need to be fleshed out, but I think that these are the kinds of ideas that we would want to put into the comments. So again, what we would really like to get across to all of you is that there is an opportunity to take action. The Housing Alliance is planning on submitting comments by November 12th. We're actually planning on having them ready early so we can circulate them to you all. Hope that you will join in submitting your own comments. That's done electronically through DEP's website, but we will provide you with a model. There are a number of groups in the state who are coming together to strategize about and work on energy efficiency programs for the Clean Power Plan, and so we would invite you to join that. And what I could use actually in terms of drafting comments, I'd like to hear your stories. If you've done a retrofit, has it been beneficial? Excuse me. If you have other properties where you haven't done the work, why not? Why one and why another? What worked for you? What didn't work? Are you saving money? And was there a special incentive program that you used, or was it self-financed or traditional conventional financing? Or if you work with homeowners or tenants, and what are their needs in terms of energy upgrades? And again, what works and what doesn't work? We'd like to hear from you. To reiterate the time frame, you've heard several times already, November 12th. Comments go in. We'll have another opportunity for comment in the spring, and then at the public hearings, the legislative hearings. Again, the states must begin compliance by 2022. What I forgot to mention under the Clean Energy Incentive Program, again, that's the one where there's special focus on low-income communities, that one of the advantages of opting into the incentive program is that Pennsylvania could begin counting emissions saved, kilowatt hours, megawatt hours saved, 2 years prior to that, starting in 2020, and count that toward the goal of reduction. So, but the state must begin compliance activities by 2022 and hit its goal by 2030. And there's my contact information. So again, our focus here today is to hopefully entice you into participating in this practice. I leave it to others, some of whom are on this call, to answer more detailed questions about the environmental impacts and maybe the inner workings of DEP and the EPA. But I'd be happy to take questions on what I've covered. I do see that a comment came in that I will read, unless the person would like to unmute with a *7. And
I think that's Kathleen Newcomer. If you want to unmute again, it's *7.
Yes, I'm here.
Would you like to make your comment for everyone?
Yeah, I was really excited about this seminar today. The Borough of Chambersburg has a housing rehab program, and through that program, we have implemented energy efficiency because we thought if we're putting a lot of effort into rehabbing homes, we should make them energy efficient at the same time. That program we put together with a local company, a local auditor, that they will come in and do a blower door test and do infrared scans on the house prior to the rehab work. The rehab work is completed, the electrical work and everything. Then they come in and they air seal the house, putting all the results from the energy audit in a priority list. And the results have been incredible. The average is 24%. We started it in 2010, but I've had homeowners with savings of 30 to 50%. And simple air sealing techniques were all that we used, and we allowed up to $5,000 for that work. So for $5,000, this is the results that we got. And we used CDBG and home money. So because we used those funds, we had to use the HUD income guidelines.
That's wonderful, Kathleen. That's a great model. Did you have any trouble recruiting people for the program?
Not at all. Once we made it known that the program was available through a couple press releases, I had a very long waiting list.
Okay, that's good information too, because we want to be able to convince the state that current resources are not meeting demand. Right? So that's terrific.
The one thing that this program did not reach, it did not reach rentals. The borough has a substantial number of rental properties, and we get calls every winter for tenants in these old rental houses that are not insulated, and they can't afford the heating bills to heat the homes in the winter. The CDBG and home regulations require that it had to be owner-occupied. So there's a huge need for this kind of work in rental properties.
Good to know. So you would be interested in a rental rehab component if you had the resources?
Yes, that would be well received.
Great, great. Anyone else? Anyone who's run a program or any questions about what we've talked about?
We also have a comment from Liz Robinson. Are you on the phone? Did you want to?
Yeah. Hi, this is Liz Robinson from UCA. The CEIP, as I understand it, is not restricted only to residences. So, depending upon how the state of Pennsylvania would define a low-income community, energy efficiency could be essentially harvested from any building in that community. So, for example, it could include schools, churches, nonprofits, small businesses, as well as residential structures. So it becomes really more of an economic development kind of program than just an energy program, in the sense that it could be used to revitalize low-income communities more broadly. So I think that's just something very important to keep in mind, that it's a real way to kind of complement other activities that local governments might be doing to revitalize distressed communities all across the state.
That's a great point. Thank you. So, of course, we don't want the residential component to get lost, but also to be revitalizing these older communities and get some resources in there for small businesses. And, as you say, schools and nonprofits could be very helpful.
There's also another aspect of the CEIP, which is solar energy. In the Clean Power Plan can be, in the CEIP, it can be distributed generation, so smaller installations, rooftop PV, could be community solar. Outside of the CEIP, the only solar that will count has to be what's considered on the utility side of the meter. In other words, the utility owns that power, but in the CEIP, it can be a broader use of solar energy. So that's of interest if anybody is contemplating a project that would involve rooftop solar PV, for example, on an affordable housing complex. Both the energy efficiency that's harvested out of those buildings and the solar can count.
That's very interesting. Liz, I actually had a comment from somebody the other day, actually a housing authority, that said they have a small, like a 25-unit development in a rural area where they did use some solar. They'd like to be able to do it in other areas. And so I guess what you're saying is if they have developments in low-income communities, as opposed to something sited maybe in a more affluent suburb, that they could use the solar under the CEIP.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. Liz, as long as you're talking, let me ask you a question about the definition of low-income community, which I think is not defined Admittedly, I didn't read the EPA rules when I saw that they're 1,560 pages, but the material that I've read, I think, doesn't define it, and that's one of the things that we would be looking at. Do you have a sense that there is sort of an accepted definition or something that you would be proposing?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk nationally about what the definition should be. EPA is apparently looking for feedback and guidance from, the low-income community right now. They want to hear from the low-income community as we speak. So a lot of people are talking about this across the country, and the general wisdom or the general consensus that's emerging is that we should look at existing definitions just for ease of administration. One of the things you have to remember about the CPP is that it gets pretty complicated in a hurry, and one of the drivers in the CPP is going to be how to bring the cost down. So how to do this as inexpensively as possible, how to administer it in an inexpensive way. So using an existing definition that is already in place in other programs, a lot of folks are saying that does make the most sense. So I personally, this is just me, I'm a fan so far of the HUD definition that is, more than half, so 50 plus 0.1% of the residents in a given area, and that could be as small as a census tract or could be a zip code, are at or below 80% of area median income. That is used in CDBG, it's used in a bunch of other HUD programs all across the country, and it's been in place for years. So to me, that's a really workable definition. So that's what I've been encouraging people to think about is, using a standard definition that already exists.
Okay, I appreciate that. I know even within the housing world there are various definitions, but thank you for that. And I did see a question come up, maybe just to reiterate what we went over. We wish we had the money to give you now. We're actually looking at creating some programs through this whole process of what do I want to say? Through the clean power process of perhaps monetizing the energy credits, perhaps having utility companies make some investments into energy upgrades, looking for some creative financing. This is our opportunity to try to create something, to create it on paper and to advocate to get it included and worked through. Kathleen's asking how much money would be available, and I haven't the slightest. I don't know, Liz, if you do, or Todd, if you're on the line, like what's the potential? Because I have to admit that I'm still a little murky on this whole idea of the state having these credits that they can auction off. How is it determined how many credits and what their value is?
Yeah, this is Liz again, unless somebody else wants to speak to this.
Go right ahead, thanks.
Yeah, I am not an expert, so I'll just tell you the little tiny bit that I know, which is that what is emerging is the best way to develop a funding stream to pay for this work is essentially to put a price on carbon, so to monetize carbon. And what that means then is that coal-fired electricity becomes a lot more expensive. Nuclear power, energy efficiency will be the cheapest. Solar would be right next to that. So the cost of electricity would carry the cost of carbon. And once you do that, then you auction off, the state could auction off carbon credits. And those who require those credits will bid, in an open environment, in an open market, for those carbon credits. And that is the structure that's already working in New England with the regional greenhouse gas, the RGGI structure that's been in place now for about 8 years. So these carbon markets already exist in the United States, and they generate a lot of money. And it's the proceeds from the auction that the DEP would ostensibly hold and fund efforts with those proceeds. The reality for low income, to be honest, is that low income people don't contribute, to weatherization programs. So the cost of this work is more expensive in low income when you look at cost effectiveness, simply because there's no contribution from the owner. So it is not an easy. So anyway, there's not a grant stream that will come with this. This has to be funded in a different way. So I would say it's very unclear exactly how this will be funded. It's really the state's decision how to do this. So would they require the LIRE programs to be expanded? That's one possibility. Would they require on-bill finance from utilities? That's another possibility. Would they, there are lots of different ways. The slide that you posted, had a whole list of possibilities. So there are a lot of different ways that this could be funded, but the principal, tool that is emerging from all the discussions that I've been part of is that the funding that will be created is by monetizing carbon.
Okay, and how? Maybe that's more than we need. I'm thinking maybe my question is more than we need to go into now. But how does one determine the economic value of carbon?
The market actually will determine it. So the state would, the principal way that this is done in the United States, the only way that it's done successfully is to have an auction for carbon credits. And the value is determined by their scarcity. So let's say in year one, the carbon credits are fairly abundant and they start off, at a relatively low price. In year two, there will be fewer of them because as you approach your goal, the total number of carbon emissions will have to decline. So the greenhouse gas emissions will have to decline over time so that there will be fewer of these credits available. So they'll be more expensive.
And is the idea that the utilities buy these credits because they're not going to meet their emissions reduction goals and therefore they need to offset them somehow?
Yes, they would be one of the buyers. Generators could be another buyer. I'm not really certain who the universe of buyers will be. Okay. That's a good question.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. And I think that for the purposes of where we are now, we don't need more detail on that. But just to know that there are potential sources of revenue. I think my approach to the comments from the Housing Alliance is not to try to devise a carbon credit program, but to say that these are the types of energy efficiency programs that would work, and that we would encourage the state to look into these various sources of financing for the programs. What else do folks want to know about the Clean Power Plan? And then let me throw out another question, and remember you can unmute your line with a *7 if you're muted. Are people on the call interested in participating in the process? I know that you're interested in getting some money, but okay, how can we participate? Thank you. Again, the Housing Alliance will draw up comments, and my goal is to have them done by the end of next week so that we can circulate the comments to all of you and other advocates or housing providers who might be interested, and hoping that you will also submit comments on DEP's website. They have to be submitted electronically. So what we would like at this point is to get as many in the housing world as possible to submit comments to DEP so that they hear the need for energy efficiency in affordable homes. Beyond that, there are a group of us, Liz's group, Energy Coordinating Agency. Is that what ECA stands for?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I'm trying to think. There are some housing groups. There are some energy groups, Green Building Coalition, and Keystone Energy Efficiency Alliance, Regional Housing Legal Services. Working with some of the nationals, and I'm not sure if Todd is on the phone. You're welcome to speak up if you are. We're getting some support, technical assistance from some national organizations to kind of coordinate our efforts on this. So we would love to have people joining that effort. And again, just like the stories, the detail, the program description that Kathleen provided, let me know what's going on in your community so we can incorporate some of that into the comments.
Can I also add, this is Joyce from the Housing Alliance, that the Housing Alliance is going to be working on this. We're in this for not until 2025, but we are in the mix for how long, Cindy? A year and a half to make sure that housing is part of the plan. So this is sort of our first effort to start to educate people, and we will continue to educate and be part. We want to be part of the conversation, so really glad people got on today to be part of this.
Thanks, Joyce. Yeah, there will be opportunities for meetings and conversations and implementation going forward. And thank you, Tracy, for your comment that you're willing to participate, and we'll be in touch with you and Kathleen. Anyone else on the call who is running or has had an experience with an energy efficiency program? Okay. It's like somebody trying to speak, but maybe you're muted. Someone with a 412 area code. Don't forget to unmute your lines. *7 if you've muted with a *6. Okay. And other questions? Well, please be on the lookout then for more information from us, as well as perhaps a phone call encouraging your participation. We really appreciate your getting on the webinar today, and do take my contact information and call or email if questions come up later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.